Evangelista is CEO and founder of Dental Force, which has grown in the last, watch these numbers, 5 years from 30 employees to 40 locations and over 400 employees. He's really had unprecedented growth, and he's done it all with senior financing. Let's welcome to the stage Dr. Evangelista.
Thank you. This is bright. There's a lot of people in here. Anyways, how's everyone doing? I want you all to wake up because I'm just waking up too. Did everybody go out last night? Oh, okay. Did anyone go out last night and have some drinks? Come on. All right. So, when I first came to one of these DEO events, it was probably around 7 years ago, and there was like 50 people. And now there's a hell of people in here. It's funny. And today I was getting ready, I was looking in the mirror, and I was saying, wow, they have really improved on the speakers that they have here. So, I take a look at this and I say, wow, all these people who really want to scale. So, that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my company, how it works. I want to basically say that I don't know what comes out of my mouth sometimes, so don't be overly sensitive. I know some dentists are really sensitive, even though dentists are usually the first people to talk shit about other dentists, right? But that's what we're going to do. So one of the things when you hear about DSOs, I want you to know, you're going to hear a lot of over-exaggerations. You're going to hear about like people who have 500 locations, 200 locations, 30% EBITDA across the board, and you're saying to yourself, how am I ever going to get there? Well, one of the things I want you to remember is, there's a lot of over-exaggerations. And so as you start to learn about other, organizations, make sure you get the facts and you don't just listen to all of the buzz around you. How many went to the Henry Schein convention 2 months ago, the DSO convention? Show of hands. Okay, so I always wonder, I met a few of the DSO guys, and I always wonder, why do they always talk about, how many locations or over-exaggerate what they had? And so I was over in a bar, I think I was sitting with Darren, and I'm sitting at a bar, and I'm just hanging out. And I'm looking over at this, the bar area, and there's really attractive female over at the corner. And so I take a look at her and I say to myself, hey, I'm gonna go talk to her. So I go over and I introduce myself. I say, hi. And I didn't want to say, hey, I'm a doctor, because I'm a really humble guy. So I just said, hey, I'm Rick, how are you doing? And she goes, I'm okay, and kind of turned away. And then some strange guy comes up to the back of me, and he says, hey, do you know who this guy is? And I said, who am I, right? And so he goes, you don't understand, this guy has like 400 locations. He makes like $100 million. So I look at the guy and I'm like, all right, I don't mind him anymore, right? Because I thought he was trying to mess with me. So, the female, she looks over at me and she's like a lot nicer. So I say to myself, I'm caught in a dilemma because I preach, just tell the truth, right? So I look over at him and I say to myself, I'm not going to correct this guy. So I guess even I sometimes fall into that thing of letting stories turn into more than they are. And so what you want to do is make sure that you get all the information. Make sure that you learn from the people who have done it before you. Make sure you know what you're going to expect and that you don't just take things and blow them out of proportion. So My company is Dental Force. Does that logo look familiar? Salesforce. I don't think it looks like Salesforce. But the funny thing is one of the co-founders of Salesforce is actually my patient. And I remember him walking into my office, which was an associate-driven office, and they were like, hey, you know who that is? And I said, no, who is it? So they tell me who it is and whatever. So I go and I Google him. And he's like, oh man, he's worth like $8 billion. So I said, hey, we can be associated with that guy, right? So Dental Force, I look at it as, Salesforce is the #1 CRM company in the world. I like to think we are the #1 management company in the world. So that's who we are. We have 2 corporate locations, one in Northern California, one in Southern California. When I started, people always ask, what books did you read? What books kind of molded you into who you are? And I always think about 3 of them, which are basically the 3 really ones that kind of stand out because I go back to them a lot. Have you guys read any of these books? Show of hands. So if you ever want to motivate yourself, these 3 books, after you read them, you'll feel like running through a wall. I mean, there's nothing better when it comes to motivation than these 3 for me. So, Tony Robbins, he's Mr. Motivation, I guess. Think and Grow Rich is kind of like the entrepreneur's Bible. And then the one that I like the most out of these 3 is Relentless by Tim Grover. Does anyone know who Tim Grover is? Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's personal coach. And in that book, he talks about 3 types of people. There are the coolers, there are the closers, and then there's the cleaners. The coolers are the guys that you kind of rely on, and they can get the job done. The closers are the ones you can rely on to get the job done well. And then the cleaners are the ones who basically get the job done without you even asking them, telling them how to do it. They're just relentless in the way that they do it. And so when I was scaling and people ask me, how did you do it? What did you do? How did you buy? How did you get to so many locations? I usually just say, it's the mindset of the way that you look at it and how hard you're going to push in order to get to that level. So in my mind, I always say to myself, I have to be relentless. And that was my mindset through this whole process. And so as I started scaling, I was doing all I could to just get any location and every location that I could, knowing that there's time constraints on money, time constraints on people, things like that. So I said, it doesn't matter, you just have to be relentless. So this is our timeline. In 2004, when I had my first practice, it did really well. And I thought I was doing pretty good, with like $1 million, $1.5 million. And after about 6 months of having that office, I had this great idea that I was going to build another de novo office. Now, when I started, I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't even know how the front office worked or anything like that. But I just said to myself, hey, why not? I'm going to open another office. So in 2005, I opened up a de novo. And instantly, that de novo did really well. And I said, wow, this is really easy. So the year after that, I said to myself, I'm going to put a new goal in my head. My goal was I was going to open or acquire 1 new office a year from 2006 to 2013. So during those years, I said, okay, 1 acquisition, it will probably take about 12 months for each acquisition to kind of come into fruition where you can like have all of the time that it takes to get that up and running to make a profit out of it. So we acquired one office until about 2013, and then we built the management company after that. We used to be called Premier Dental Partners. In 2013, I had another bright idea, and I said to myself, this is not enough. I want to see if I can acquire 7 offices every year for the next 5 years. And there's a lot of constraints in doing that. When you get to that level, you know what are all the hardships of getting the money and scaling. But then, like I said, in my head, I just had to say, we are going to do this. We're going to be relentless. We're going to pick up everything in sight, and we're going to scale as hard as possible. And my team at that time was 2 people, and they're standing back there. Say, hello, team. So it is me. Yeah, give them a round of applause. So people say, hey, you must have had this huge team, you must have had this, and that. I would say, my team are those 2 people standing back there, and I remember telling them, we're gonna acquire everything in sight. It's gonna be hard and fast, and you guys better keep the hell up. And they said, what did you guys say?
Bring it on.
Bring it on. So making sure that your team that's around you is also supporting what your vision is really important. But at that time, I really didn't know what we were doing too much, but I said to myself, hey, mindset is grow as fast as possible. We only have so much time. Everything to me was about my time constraints, so I said, no, it doesn't matter. It was almost every 6 to 8 weeks we did an acquisition, and then we started acquiring, and literally 5 years later, that's how we got to 40 practices. So it worked. So I know I'm up here because I'm supposed to talk about DSOs and how it has changed the industry, what is the past of DSOs, what is the present, and then where are DSOs going in the future. Well, when I started, there was not really a lot of DSOs out there, just the big guys, and maybe 2 or 3 other groups. And so when you're growing, I don't know if any of you have gotten the word corporate out of your organization, but when you start to be called corporate, it kind of changes everything for you. Because your employees start to think of you as different. It could be even your closest employees, when they start saying corporate, they look at you differently. And back then, it was even worse because even your colleagues, the dentists all in your community, everybody starts talking shit about your organization. And it's really bad. Because just because you have multiple locations, all of a sudden, people will say, oh, you guys don't care about quality. Oh, you only care about making money. Oh, all you want to do is hurt people to make a living. And you will start to hear some of those things. And that's what it was in the beginning. We do mostly acquisitions, and there were times where the brokers would hide the practices from us. And we would call on them and say, hey, I see this listing that you guys have. And they would say, oh, no, that listing is not there. And then we would find out through other guys, no, that listing is there. We would show up at the open house, and they wouldn't even talk to us because we were multi-practice owners. And it got to a point where we had to approach doctors, before brokers even got to them, or else we didn't even have a chance at those practices. Dentistry has changed a lot from the history of dentistry. Dentistry used to be you couldn't advertise, right? It used to be you couldn't even put your name on your office. And then it was taboo to even put your, you couldn't advertise, you couldn't put it in a strip mall, it had to be in a professional building. You couldn't be on the radio, you couldn't give out referral gifts, you couldn't do all of these things, and all of that has changed over time because now shit, there's a dental office almost every corner. There's a dental office in Walmart, right? There's a dental office everywhere. And now people are looking at it as it's an okay thing to do because, you know, as long as it makes money. And that's what's happened kind of in the DSO space. The DSOs, although it used to be a bad thing, now it's becoming more and more mainstream. So the problems that I had, let's just say 15 years ago, I don't even have those problems. I mean, most of you don't even see most of those problems today. Because now DSOs are, you know, they're at schools. DSOs are basically almost every new graduate starts somewhere, right? And where are they going to start? They're going to start somewhere in one of these organizations. So as we go forward, and the DSOs basically have become more mainstream for us, we have been able to do something in our company that other organizations haven't been able to do. And so in my mind, I had an idea. And since DSOs are becoming more mainstream, I approached one of the biggest schools in my area, which is UCSF. And at UCSF, once again, we were pretty relentless at getting to the president of the dental school. And I talked him into this great idea of having their students do their rotations out of my company. And so, at first they were very hesitant to, have a private organization part of, the school. And I said, no, just think about it. Dentists, when they come out of school, they don't know nothing about business. And so, you don't have any business courses. The students don't really know how it works in private practice, because for those of you who have associates know, your associate comes out and they don't know very much. And so I wanted a place where they would learn what it is to be in private practice, and they could do it out of our company. And so we struck a deal where UCSF and Dental Force are basically have a partnership where all of the D4 students now do rotations through my company, and it's a requirement for them to graduate. Round of applause. So, what it tells me is that if I can get a state-funded school to look at a DSO and think it's a great thing for the industry, then you know that DSOs are now becoming one of the most important parts in dentistry. Now, are the private practices going to go away? I don't think so. But as you start to build these organizations, it's just going to become the norm soon. And as we grow and grow, the sky is the limit now on how big you want your organization to grow. Because there are no real rules when you're building this. I can say everybody who's on screen and he's talked about in dentistry that's building these DSOs, everyone has a different model. My model is different than that guy has a different model than this one. And you can just decide what model you want to do. The golden age of dentistry is dead, that's what people say. But and I believe that's true to a sense. But the golden age of DSOs is just beginning. And so as you start to grow your organizations, there's no better time than there is today to build these organizations, because one, there's so much support for it today, and it's becoming so mainstream, it's not a big deal. I actually did an acquisition probably 3 months ago, and at that acquisition, when I was done, the doctor actually came to me and he said, so what private equity group, is funding my office? And I said to himself, no, we're privately funded. And he actually was sad about it, because he was kind of excited that he was going to have all this money that was going to back his office. So when you hear that, you say to yourself, wow, even these guys who are out in the public who are selling their practices, they're also open to the fact now. So let's just say 20 years ago, they didn't want to sell it to us. Now they know how much money they get on the open market, and now they're searching out DSOs to come buy them. So that's what has changed in the industry. So, are DSOs good for the industry? A lot of people ask that, and you're going to get asked that a lot. You know, a lot of people think that DSOs are bad for the industry. And the reason why is because they think that private practice is really where to go. They don't want private practice to go. They want to preserve it, and they think that DSOs are going to destroy it. But I don't think that anymore, because at one point I did think that. But today, as I'm building my organization, I start to see why there's a need for DSOs. What do you think is the main reason we need DSOs? Does anyone know? Band of brothers. I believe the reason why we have DSOs is because DSOs are the ones now who fight for the dentist. Because as you grow, the single practice dentist doesn't really have a voice. But a guy who has 1,000 offices, when he's talking, he can fight for the dentist. And he will fight for reimbursements. He's the one who's fighting to fix the inconsistencies in dentistry. If you think about it, we have metrics today that we didn't have, let's just say even 7 years ago. 7 years ago, we were doing metrics by hand. We were doing it on spreadsheets. Today, we have, 150, 200 metrics you can get on your software. And you say to yourself, why do we have metrics like that? And I believe it's because the DSOs are the ones who are pushing all that intel, because there's no way for them to scale without having all that information. I mean, there's a metric for almost everything that you can think of. I almost believe there's a metric for how many times the doctor gets irritated to how much production he makes. And if you metric that, I bet you'll say, it would probably help your practice if you could get that. So, anyways, that's why I believe DSOs are there. Where is your associates going to get trained? You know, most of you who are hiring associates, who has hired associates? So everyone who has raised their hand knows the pain of hiring an associate. Who has hired an associate right out of school? Yeah, so you guys know that when an associate comes out of school, they know absolutely nothing, right? Well, I am a professor at both of the dental schools in one area. I am a professor at the University of Pacific and UCSF. And when my students graduate, I will tell you that nowadays, some of them have graduated and only cut 4 crowns. I don't know how you can cut 4 crowns on a patient and then graduate them and put them into the real world and say, there you go. They don't know what we knew 20 years ago. And so as they come out, they need a place where they're going to learn. And one of the best places for them to learn is usually at one of our organizations. Because we'll take them in, and we're actually teachers. And so we have to teach them how to be dentists now. Because the educational system doesn't provide the education that they need in order for them to succeed. And so if they come to our organization, I know that within 1 year, they learn twice as much that they did while they were in school. Right? On top of it, you know, when they graduate, they owe probably somewhere between $400,000 or $500,000. I don't know how they function when they owe that much money, because they're paying it back at right around 8%. I know there was an article out there where there's a dentist and he graduated with $1 million in debt. Did anybody see that article? So think about it. Dentist graduates, he has $400,000 in debt, he's paying it at 8% over 15 years. What is the monthly payment on that? Probably $4,000 or $5,000. So what's the typical associate make every year? Or coming out of school? What do you guys pay a typical associate 1 year out? $150, if that, right? So $150, $10,000 a month. You pay taxes on that. You pay $4,000. He makes $2,000 to $3,000 take home for his first year, and he's a dentist. That's why where is that guy going to get a job? He has to get a job somewhere. That's why I think DSOs are so important, is because we do have that ability to now take students and train them and give them a start on their career better than they have before. And so as we progress as a company, my goal has always been to teach. And I'm a teacher at heart. Sometimes I get frustrated with these kids, but my goal is to help the dentists. And so as we have progressed from owning dental offices, which we still acquire, we still do some de novos, we're still growing on the dental side, I have moved my focus more on the management side. So Dental Force is basically the management side now, and our goal is to teach dentists how to be more productive in their offices, how to systemize them, how to make sure that they're going to grow as fast as possible, and so that a dentist can be more successful than they've ever been without having the stresses that most dentists have. And so here's my company. This is our platform of all the services that we do now provide. And our goal really is to just help those who really want the help. So my company now, as we have gone out, our goal has always been to hold some type of seminar, just like we would here, to show what we could do and how we can help an office. One of the problems I've always had about seminars and things like that is that I feel like they don't really give you everything that you need in order to succeed, or they're trying to get you to buy into something else. And so one of the things I wanted to do is make sure that if you did come to one of mine, that it was 100% money back guarantee, that you got as much as you could out of it, and that we would track the success of your practice after you left. How many have been to my seminar? That's it. All right. Here is a video of what we do. This seminar is going to be not only the most powerful dental seminar you go to, but it is going to be a life-changing event.
He gives a lot of nuggets away. Other places are here is what I'm going to do for you. Here's a sales pitch if you actually want to find out how I did this, and if you actually want my help, here's my fee.
In the time that I've been working with Dr. Evangelista, our practice has doubled, and my income has probably tripled, and that's like an understatement. I've never been more happy in dentistry in my life.
I would highly recommend them, and I would wish there was a online version so I could bring it home to my staff tomorrow.
You guys can ask as many questions as you want. I hate when I go to a seminar and I'm looking for really answers to 2 questions, and I wait for the whole thing, and I never get those answers. Raise your hand, you'll get a bunch, okay?
Actually, recommended this seminar to a friend on Facebook like maybe a few minutes ago.
Finally, I've got some concrete things to take back, like actual checklists and systems like the patient flow, verbiage to use, and those are going to be really effective. I think from day one.
Super smart, concise, to the point, super practical, and coming from somebody who knows what they're talking about because they've been there and they've done that, and it's not just a talking head.
I had 3 practices that I sold them 20 years ago, and I'm still relevant. Listen to me, I'm really good. That's not there, and it's refreshing. So.
If I had taken this course 15 years ago, I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and a lot of money.
So that's what we do now. I kind of dedicated basically everything that we do now to help tenants, help them, increase the amount of production that they do in an office. Our course, I believe, is just different than any other course. We don't go straight by numbers and things like that. It's honestly mindset. And for me, I look at dentists as, I kind of equate them to like an athlete. And an athlete, if he wants to get better, he basically learns every skill he can. He practices, he learns all the skills, and he gets good. Same thing as a dentist. You go to courses, you learn CE, you try to learn as much information as you can, but then what happens is you get back to your office and you now want to implement it, and then how do you do it? That's why I think it's backward. When athletes learn their skill, they practice so much, and then the mindset part is what they do at the end. When it should be backwards, because the only difference between a great athlete, someone who really takes it to that next level, is just mindset, right? And yet we always put mindset and all of that at the end of learning all the skills. If a dentist can take the mindset and say, that's my first thing that I'm going to work at. I'm going to push myself to that next level. I can do whatever I can and be relentless. You will be able to accomplish whatever you want. Because mindset is the one thing that's going to be the difference on, can you get from what location you're trying to do to whatever your end goal is. And believe me, if your end goal is 5 offices, you're going to change your goal and then you're going to want 10. Because as we grow and we progress and we hit goals, we're just going to keep changing our goal and changing until who knows where we stop. And that's basically what happened with us. We just keep growing and growing and growing. Our next course is in August 9 and 10. That's in San Diego. For those of you who went to my workshop 2 days ago, where you were learning centralized services, my course this time is actually going to be at my support center so that you get to see it. You'll be able to listen how they answer phone calls, all the phone scripts, everything we do. It'll all be there for you to ask questions, sit in with a call, and everything like that. If you want more information on it, basically the 2 young ladies in the back can help you out. And we can go from there. If you want more information, you can text your information, your email address to that phone number, and somebody will get back to you. So, as we go forward and you guys go on your journey to whatever your next step is, just remember that the old adage of good things come to those who wait, nothing comes to those who wait. You've got to get in there. Don't overthink the things that you're doing. Do what you want to do and it will all work out for you. There's a lot of support out there for you too. Look at this. You have all of these people here who you can learn from. There's vast amount of stuff that is out there from YouTube to people here. You get so much information that was never handed to us, 15 to 20 years ago. So as you go on your journey, if you need any help or whatever, I'm here for you, or you can go, anywhere else. Thank you.
All right, Doc, now we get to ask you a bunch of questions we wanted to drill down. So I want to lay it out. You were really intense on mindset being the first foundation. You didn't go with centralized services or doctor recruiting or anything like that. Why is that such a big deal when you're looking back? Why are you saying, read these books and do this first? Is it from your interaction with other doctors, or what is it that's gumming up other people from solving this?
Well, I look at it as all the dentists that have been around me who have wanted to scale are no different than I am. We all have the same abilities. We're all dentists. We all go to the same open houses or have the same areas that we can open up offices. So what's the difference between me and them, right? There really is no difference from me or anyone in here. The only difference is the mindset that you put in your head on what's your next move. Because the mind always plays tricks on you. No matter what you want and no matter what you want to do, your mind will find a way to talk you out of it. Because that's our natural tendency. As humans, we always are trying to survive, right? That's kind of like human nature. And so no matter what comes that's uncomfortable, we try not to do it. And we tell ourselves, no, don't do that. That location isn't as good. That office, no, the doctor's not that good, his Yelp suck or whatever, right? You'll find ways. But if you put all that away and you say to yourself, no, I'm going to do whatever it takes. If I get this office, I'm going to turn it around. That's what changes.
Now, if you could go back to yourself, 10 years ago, and just taking this one down tactically, having done so many acquisitions and locations, what would be the thing you would tell yourself, okay, this is going to be more important than you thought it was, whether it be around the people or the acquisition process or whatever. Give us one nugget there.
I would say, because mindset's a huge thing for me, that I would have told myself to prepare for all the shit that's going to happen. And there is a lot, I won't lie. I have made almost every mistake in the book. And if you've heard me speak before, I can give you a lot of real funny examples about what has happened, acquisitions that I bought. I mean, I bought an office before, paid $1 million, and literally within 3 to 4 days, that office disappeared. And I lost $1 million literally in a couple of days. That can happen very easily. You can have other things that happen, but if you keep telling yourself that it's a process, and I always say that, just don't worry, trust the process.
So where you sit today, you actually don't think that there's a secret that you could have told yourself to avoid all of the failures. It really does take a mindset that you're just going to have to take them on and learn them along the way.
There definitely is a lot of things that I wish I would have known that I know today. For sure, there's different acquisitions that you do that you don't fall into pitfalls here. There's different things in your contracts that you have to make sure that you have in your contracts. Now, I'm from California. How many people are from California? So those of you from California, they all feel my pain because they know that California has the worst employee law in the world, right? Clap your hands for California. DSOs stay out of California. There's a reason why most of the big guys stay out. But for me, if I had what you guys had here, definitely I would be in a better place. Because there's a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't have made. But it took for me to make those mistakes to be able to say, don't do this, don't do that, make sure your contract has this, make sure you don't. And yeah, there's a lot of things I wouldn't have done. But regardless of knowing all that information, if you in your head don't know what to do and not to be able to train yourself that this is where I want to go and I'm going to be relentless at doing it and nothing's going to stop me, you're just never going to get to that next level. Because you get no's all the time. I get no in my face on the constant. You know, for those of you who have had problems with bank financing, people say, hey, how did you scale from this to that? How did you keep getting money from a bank? And it was because I'm just relentless at the banks. I asked them over and over. There's a time when I was scaling between my 5th and 6th practice where I went to 9 different banks before I got a yes. Now, most people, they're not going to go to 9 banks, right? They're going to say, no, you can't do it. But every year after that, even though they said no, how did I keep scaling? Because it's all bank finance. Every time I did an acquisition, the bank would say, you know, we should have never given you this money. And then 20 times later, I'm like, I get it. You should have never given me this money. Now, write me a check.
All right, we've got a couple live questions here. We've got one up front. If someone can do a microphone, just put your hand real high. And then, Rich, if you want to look over those that are on the screen, and we'll kind of play ping pong back and forth between some of the live ones and those that are being texted.
Okay. So Rich, right, Rich in front of you. Rich.
Oh, yeah.
So you're relentless no matter what. Like, you don't really allow any person to influence you. It's almost like the more people say no to you, the more you bang your head to the wall, you're just going to keep trying. Right? So I admire that. I never met anybody like you. I'm like you, but not as much. But what made you be like that? Did you have a lot of, was it your childhood? Was something happening in your childhood that made you be like that? It would be funny, but I'm trying to figure out. I love how you are. Everybody here, because we're all really the same. But what made you be the way you are? Because I think that's a crucial ingredient in being successful.
So, like, was I beat up as a kid? Like, was I bullied? No, I mean, I just think that if you have a goal, and honestly, that's your goal, or else you're not going to be happy. Because for me, all of the things that I wanted to achieve I didn't want to achieve them for money. I wanted to achieve them because I just wanted to see how far I could push myself, how far I could push my team. I mean, there were times where my team would be like, you know, you might be pushing a little too hard. I mean, we've had a lot of, you know, we've had it out a few times because, hey, I just want to keep going. And I don't think it's anything other, I mean, I had 2 older brothers that used to beat me up, but other than that, I don't know, you know, if there's anything in particular that has made me to want to do it this way. But I just knew, like, if you want something, I was always trained as a child that if you put it out there, like you put it in the universe will provide.
Good. Doc, is there one on the text there that you want to take?
What are the criteria for a particular practice that makes you want to buy it? Who asked that question? All right. Everybody wants to know, right? So in an acquisition, and not a de novo, acquisitions are always cost a lot more. And when it costs a lot more, your mortgage costs more and everything. So what I look at is, if this acquisition is a purely associate-driven acquisition, I need to make sure that it's going to make so much money a year in order to cover my mortgage, in order to cover the overhead. And so for me, we always look at 7+ chairs, somewhere between 8 to 10 days of hygiene at least, and be able to flip 2 to 3 doctors in there at one time. If you don't have that, it just makes everything more difficult. Now, did I acquire before anything smaller than that? Yes. I acquired offices that are $100,000 or $200,000, and we had to build it up, and it takes, you know, somewhere between 6 to 12 months to build those up. But for me today, it just doesn't make sense for the amount of time that we have to take to build up an office. I'm looking at everything in the $2+ million in acquisitions. How did I get financed for my first few acquisitions? I just went to a bank. So, you know, there's some banks out there that are more liberal at lending, and then there's some that are not at all. You know, your typical mainstream banks are not going to let you get more than 2 or 3 practices. As you start to move out of those banks, they'll get you, 3 or 4, and you really don't have too much trouble until you get about to 5. How'd you get money to grow? Same thing, banks.
Do you want to name, do you feel comfortable naming a couple banks, just giving us some tactical ones that you've gone, because you've touched on quite a few, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've used probably 15 different banks. So, the big banks that I'm talking about, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, everyone knows those banks. Those banks are not very liberal in giving. Now, the smaller banks, and this is one of the differences today than it was like when I started. When I started, it was absolutely no for everyone. Today, Citibank is getting into the DSO space. I think Zion Bank is here, right? Zion does. Some other banks I don't know.
Yeah, those are good ones to think about, though.
Yeah. Today I use a private bank, so they basically don't have too many restrictions in funding, and I'm able to still get money if I need it.
Did you find that the banks were more friendly with acquisitions or de novos?
The banks are always going to be more friendly with acquisitions. Acquisitions are a lot easier because you have cash flow right away. And remember, when they're lending, they're only lending on cash flow. So the more cash flow you can actually show on your books, the easier it is to lend.
To collateralize assets, to give loans?
Yes. I mean, you put...
Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so no matter what, when you're getting your loans for your practices, you put everything that you have on the line because you want to show a portfolio that shows that you can handle when anything bad happens. So you're going to cross-collateralize almost every practice you have until you get to a point where you have enough money that the banks aren't going to require that. But I'll tell you, I still cross-collateralize everything because we still push and push and push. So there's no way to get away from that. Now, if you have like an investor, private equity, things like that, you don't have to do that anymore.
Do you have like a change management checklist when you're going in? How much do you, I think in acquisition strategy, there's those who are maybe like higher touch. We have a specific way that we do things here. We're trying to standardize. We have those who are very light, and kind of let them just do their own thing, though I think that's
Sure.
going away more and more.
So for those of you who do acquisitions, we've tried it and beta tested it many different ways to do an acquisition. There are times where we do an acquisition and we throw the systems right at them and they get pissed off and everyone quits. And then there's times where we let them go and hey, you just do your own thing, and then they go rogue and then the whole place goes bad, right? So is there a real way to do it? No, it's always dependent on that office. I'll tell you a story. I had an office that we acquired one time, and one of the assistants, I think it was an assistant, asked me a question, and she says, what would you do if we all had a mass exodus? And I said, what do you mean a mass exodus? I remember asking, I was like, what does she mean? We transitioned the next day, no one showed up to work. All 8 employees or whatever it was. That is very difficult to overcome. But it's because we didn't read that correctly. We didn't know whether or not we're supposed to come in and train, or we're supposed to do this or do that. Now, we will take every case, its own, and then try to figure out what's the best for that office. And there's a lot of precautions that we make that never happens again, but that's something that could happen to anyone. You just don't know it. So, yeah, I'd say half the time we don't mess with it, the other half the time we do.
How important is it for you to have the practice management software the same across your locations?
So we run mostly on one practice management software, but it doesn't really matter. Everything to us is about systems, right? And so the systems are not, still based on some of the practice management, but we're more about trying to take away the complexity, make it as simple as possible for the people in the office to do their position. And so the software is not the biggest problem. Now, you change the software on day one, your staff will quit, right? So we're not changing software on day one. We're changing software after we get the staff to say, hey, that would be a great idea to change software, right? You have to condition their heads to say that's a wonderful thing before you go in there and start to disrupt anything.
Good. Any other live questions? If you want to look on there, Doug. Was there a hand up right here? Yep. Okay. Great. We'll get a microphone to you.
So how do you transfer culture from place to place?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. Are there kind of no-goes, like non-negotiables? If you see a culture piece where you say, I'm walking from this, and then so that, just to kind of start that question, you know, when you walk in, is there ever a culture where you say, I'm not going, and then from there, how do you change it?
So are you asking, like, we walk into an office and they have their own culture, and we're trying to change that? So the truth is, as you scale, you lose control, right? No matter what you do. Especially, we were talking in the workshop that, yeah, you have 1, 2, 3 practices, you still visit those practices, you still practice. It's easy to make the culture okay, right? Buy a few donuts, say hi, and everything's okay. As you start to scale it, you don't ever go to that office, you don't see the employees, you don't know anything going on in there. Can you make sure that it's all the same? No, you can't. What my goal is not culture per se. Our goal is really to make it as simple as possible for everyone to do their positions. Because complexity is the enemy of execution, right? The more complex you make their jobs, the worse it gets for your employee. Because if there's so much thinking that has to be involved, and all of you have had office managers who will tell you that their job is impossible to do, right? Our goal is to make sure that every single position only has 1, 2, 3 things that they have to do. That's what keeps their motivation up. That's what makes them want to succeed, and that's how I, try to keep the control when it gets that big. Centralized services, we have centralized everything, and that comes into what you were asking. We wouldn't be able to do it without doing centralized services. Because if your office managers are the ones that you're dependent on in each office, then that's when everything goes crazy. So for those of you who have 1, 2, or 3 practices, you lose your office manager, there goes your office, right? You'll lose $100,000 overnight because there's no one there to bill, right? You can pull one person here and there. It's easy to control that. But as you grow really big, you really don't have the luxuries of losing office managers. Because when you're 1, 2, 3 practices, usually what you'll do is you'll have a great office manager in each one and they take care of the practice, right? But when you're at 20, 30 locations and you lose 1 or 2 office managers, I don't know what you can do. It's almost impossible for you to go to those 2 practices and make sure they're okay when you have all this other stuff going on. So what we do is we pull all of those duties out of the office and put them all into centralized services. So what's left in the office is so simple that they don't have to worry, or we don't have to worry because the billing still gets done. The phones still get answered. Everything is still done. The only thing you don't have is someone to treatment plan. So all we have to do is find someone to treatment plan to fill in the position and everything else still gets done.
Awesome. One more question? You want to pull one more off of here, Doc? Or is there one in the back that you're looking at? Oh, did you get the date? Everybody wants to know how it went with the girl. Like, did the